My name is Sarah. I'm 29. And the moment my mother-in-law called me nothing but a barren waste of space in front of my entire family, I knew exactly what I was going to do. It was Thanksgiving 2022, and we were all crammed into David's childhood home. That suffocating colonial with the beige everything and family photos arranged like shrines to his mother's perfect vision of what our lives should look like. I was helping in the kitchen, trying to be useful, despite the fact that Margaret had made it clear over the past 3 years that nothing I did would ever be good enough for her precious son. "Sarah, honey," she'd said, her voice dripping with that particular brand of southern sweetness that always preceded something cruel. "Maybe you should just focus on setting the table. Cooking requires a certain intuition that comes naturally to real mothers." The room went silent. David's sister, Jessica, looked down at her phone. His father cleared his throat and mumbled something about checking the game. David himself, my husband of 3 years, just stood there carving the turkey with a mechanical precision, as if he hadn't heard a thing. But I heard it. I heard the emphasis on real mothers. I heard the weight of all our failed attempts, all the negative pregnancy tests, all the fertility appointments she somehow always knew about despite us never telling her. I heard 3 years of comments about my career obsession and how I was too selfish to give her grandchildren. "Margaret," I said quietly, setting down the gravy boat with deliberate care, "I think there might be some confusion here." She turned to me with that smile, the one that looked warm from a distance but turned predatory up close. "Oh, about what, dear? About who exactly is barren in this family?" The kitchen went dead silent. Even the football game seemed to pause in the living room. Margaret's face went white, then red, then something approaching purple. "Excuse me." I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope I'd been carrying for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. My hands were steady, steadier than they'd been in months. "See, when David and I started having trouble conceiving, we both got tested. Thoroughly tested. And it turns out," I opened the envelope and pulled out the medical reports, spreading them across her pristine granite countertop like playing cards, "I'm perfectly fertile. Healthy as a horse," the doctor said. "Textbook reproductive system." Margaret stared at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language. "David, on the other hand," I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word, "has a condition called oligospermia. Severely low sperm count. Likely genetic, the specialist said, something that often runs in families." David dropped the carving knife. It clattered against the ceramic platter with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire house. The doctor was very interested in family history. I went on, looking directly at Margaret now. "Apparently, it can skip generations, but it's often linked to maternal factors. Stress during pregnancy, certain medications, environmental toxins. Sometimes even emotional trauma can affect fetal development in ways that don't manifest until adulthood." Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "I've been doing some research," I said, pulling out another set of papers. "David mentioned you had a difficult pregnancy with him. Bed rest for months, lots of medication. And I couldn't help but notice." I gestured toward the family photos lining the mantel. "David's the only boy among your 4 children. And the only one who's had trouble conceiving." The silence stretched so long I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. "His sisters all have children," I continued conversationally. "Multiple children, in fact. Jessica has 3, Rebecca has twins, and even little Marie already has one on the way. It's almost like the genetic issue specifically affects the male line. Fascinating how genetics work, isn't it?" Margaret was gripping the edge of the counter so hard her knuckles had gone white. "Of course," I said, carefully gathering up the medical reports. "We're not giving up. There are treatments, procedures. IVF with ICSI has very promising success rates for oligospermia. David's count isn't 0, just significantly low. With the right medical intervention, we might still be able to have children." I folded the papers neatly and slipped them back into the envelope. "But in the meantime, I thought you should know, since you've been so concerned about our family planning, I wanted to make sure you understood that when we do have children someday, they'll have half my genes. The fertile half." Margaret opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. "Oh, and Margaret?" I smiled. Really smiled for the first time in 3 years of family gatherings. "I recorded that conversation just now. The part where you called me barren and a waste of space. I've been recording our conversations for months, actually, building quite a collection. David's been asking me why I've seemed so distant from his family lately, and I think it's time I showed him exactly why. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. Margaret's voice filled the kitchen crystal clear. Cooking requires a certain intuition that comes naturally to real mothers. David's face went ashen. His father appeared in the doorway, drawn by the silence. Jessica and Rebecca peered in from the dining room. You see, I continued, addressing the room now, I'm not the problem here. I never was. I'm a successful marketing director who owns her own home, maintains her own credit score, and has been nothing but respectful to this family despite being treated like an outsider from day one. I cook. I clean. I show up to every birthday and holiday with thoughtful gifts. I listen to stories I've heard a dozen times and laugh at jokes that weren't funny the first time. I looked directly at David. But I will not be gaslit into believing that our fertility struggles are my fault when you've known the truth for 6 months and let your mother blame me anyway. David's mouth moved, but no sound came out. I love you, I said to him, and I meant it. But I love myself more. And I'm done being the scapegoat for your family's inability to face uncomfortable truths. I turned back to Margaret, who was still gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. As for you, Margaret, I have a proposition. You can apologize publicly in front of everyone here for the months of verbal abuse and emotional manipulation. You can acknowledge that David's fertility issues are not my fault. And you can promise to treat me with the basic respect you'd show a stranger on the street. I held up my phone. Or I can send these recordings to every member of your bridge club, your book club, and your church congregation. I'm particularly fond of the one where you said I was probably sleeping around because clearly that's why we weren't getting pregnant. The color drained from her face completely. Your choice, I said. But choose quickly because the turkey's getting cold and I have somewhere else to be. Margaret looked around the room at David, who was staring at the floor, at her husband, who was studying the ceiling, at her daughters who were looking anywhere but at her. She started then stopped. I'm waiting, I said pleasantly. I'm sorry. The words came out as barely a whisper. I'm sorry, but I didn't catch that. Could you speak up and maybe be a bit more specific about what you're apologizing for? Margaret's hands were shaking now. I'm sorry for the things I said about you about the fertility issues being your fault. They're not. I know they're not. And I should have treated you better. You're my son's wife and you're a good person. It wasn't the most gracious apology in the world, but it would do. Thank you, I said. That wasn't so hard, was it? I walked over to David and kissed his cheek. He still looked shell-shocked. I'm going to my sister's for dessert, I told him. You can stay here and process this with your family, or you can come with me. Your choice. But if you stay, we are going to have a very long conversation when you get home about boundaries and respect and what it means to be married to someone. I grabbed my coat from the hall closet and headed for the door. Sarah, wait, David called after me. I turned back. He was standing in the doorway, looking lost and younger than his 31 years. I didn't know what to do, he said. She's my mother. She's your mother, I agreed. But I'm your wife. And for the past 3 years you've let her treat me like garbage because it was easier than standing up to her. That stops now. Or I stop being your wife. I walked to my car without looking back. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw David grab his coat and keys through the window. He followed me to my sister's house. We spent the evening with people who actually liked me, eating pumpkin pie and playing board games and laughing at things that were actually funny. David was quiet most of the night, but he stayed. He stayed. And when we got home, we talked until 3 in the morning about respect and boundaries and what our marriage was going to look like going forward. It's been 8 months since that Thanksgiving. We're in couples therapy. David has started standing up to his mother. Not perfectly, but consistently. Margaret and I aren't friends and we probably never will be. But she treats me with careful politeness now, like I'm a small explosive device that might go off if handled roughly. We started IVF last month. The first cycle didn't work, but our doctor is optimistic about the second. And when we do have children someday, because I believe we will, they'll grow up knowing that their mother is not someone who accepts being treated as less than she is. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or cruel. Sometimes it's just refusing to carry shame that was never yours to begin with. Sometimes it's standing up and saying, "No more," and meaning it with every fiber of your being. The recording app on my phone is still there. I don't need it anymore, but I keep it as a reminder. I am not responsible for other people's comfort with the truth. I am only responsible for speaking it. And speaking it, I discovered, feels a lot like flying.